So I'm just going to hand over to Meredith to tell us a bit more about Trussell. And the context of the project.
We are a UK anti-poverty charity, and our goal is to end hunger in the UK. And we do this in partnership with about 1,400 food banks who really tirelessly provide not only emergency food, but practical support for people who need it. And we also work with them to campaign for change. We are a charity who are trying to end our own existence because we believe that there is a future when nobody needs a food bank to survive. But hunger in the UK isn't actually about access to food, it's about income. And we know it takes more than providing just emergency food to end hunger in the UK. So that's why, as a charity, we bring together not only our network of 1,400 food banks, but their communities, people with lived experience of poverty, to fight for a more just and compassionate society, and to challenge those structural economic issues that lock people into poverty. And we do that on a national and also a local level. But until that future is here, we will work tirelessly to still continue to provide emergency food and support to people facing their hardest moments. The current climate we are in is not great. We and just our network have given out 3.1 million emergency food parcels in the UK. Most food parcels are designed to last for 3 to 5 days. That is a 94% increase from where we were pre-COVID. And over a third, 1.1 million of those parcels were for children in the UK. The role of digital is absolutely integral for us in terms of delivering our mission and our longer-term future. An example is that on our website we've raised 13.6 million through our digital experiences online to support us in that vision. But they're also really important in terms of how people access support, how our food banks connect with their local communities, and how we mobilise people in the UK to take action. And in the summer of 2023, we faced some really significant challenges, which is how we started working with our wonderful partners, Manifesto. Our legacy system was literally on its knees. I spent Christmas of 2021 trying to recode our donation platform because it didn't work anymore on our biggest fundraising day of the year. We had faced significant challenges beyond that, but also we and our food banks had outgrown this legacy system. It was a WordPress multi-site, and it hadn't had a penny spent on it since it was built 7 years ago. We also had a new brand coming to help us drive relevancy, saliency, and accessibility. And because of all this, we needed to find a partner who could help not only us and our network, but who could do it in 12 months. Which was a pretty big challenge. But we did it, incredibly, and I still can't almost believe that we actually did it. We built a new donation platform and did that from discovery to live within 8 months. We also went from discovery to a new corporate site within 12 months and rolled out 432 have begun rolling out food bank websites. And I think that's really crucial, is when we talk about our digital experience, we're not just talking about Trussell, the charity's website, but we also provide websites for our food bank network as well. The biggest challenge with this project was that accessing emergency food and support is complex. People can't just walk into a food bank and get emergency food. You need to be referred, you need to get a voucher, and that happens through things like social services, doctors, schools, your local council. You then need to find your local food bank, find out where distribution centres are, and go and collect your parcel. That is not something that most people facing hardship understand, and we knew that our websites were making this experience of people getting the support that they need much more difficult. It was adding stress, it was adding complexity, and so this was our main priority moving forward with this project. Another challenge was that we're not just talking about a corporate site, we're talking about lots of food bank sites, and the short timeline to say nothing of that. We needed people that no matter where they were coming into to get a really clear and consistent experience, whether or not you entered through our site, whether or not you entered through one of our food bank sites. To add complexity to that, we operate on a franchise agreement with our food banks because we believe that most food banks in their communities know what their community needs far better than we do, and they should be given the freedom to operate in that way. As a result of that, they're not obliged to use the websites we provide them, and many of them choose not to. So we were trying to bring together a digital experience that didn't even all sit on the same ecosystem. We didn't even have control over most of it. Another layer of complexity is there are a really wide range of food banks in the UK. Some of them have full-time marketing officers who would have the capacity to run a website. Others are run one day a week by a local lady in her village hall, and the board is all over 80, and the thought of running a website for them is just absolutely overwhelming. So there are a lot of challenges that we pass to Manifesto.
So, as you've heard, we wanted to design a really great experience for people accessing emergency food, and we wanted them to be able to have that experience no matter where they came into the digital journey. But we also had the challenge that the food banks didn't have to implement the experience that we spent a lot of time designing, which I'll touch on towards the end of this presentation. So it was really, really crucial part of the project that we engaged and gained the trust of the extensive food bank network, really working hard to understand what they need from that digital experience, what it is that they're looking for, what their challenges were in implementing websites, how we could make these new sort of multi-site experience something they actually wanted to engage with. So we started going wide, looking at all the existing sites, seeing where the commonalities were, seeing where the differences were, looking at where the challenges were from the user perspective that we want to tackle in the new experience, and surveying the entire food bank network as well, so they could tell us what they wanted from the future site experience, what was important to them, what some of their limitations were. And through this work and synthesising that, we saw there were two really sort of clear segments within the food banks. And they were very conflicting in what they needed. So there was a group of food banks who wanted to be really creative with their website experience, enjoyed that part of what they did, wanted to have that flexibility to ensure that it represented their local sort of voice and the things they wanted to talk about. And then on the other side, there was a segment of people who just wanted to be able to set up a website that offered those core experiences, accessing emergency food, making donations as easy as possible with minimum effort. So to kind of tackle how we solved that problem, we brought together a panel of food banks that represented all of those different needs, all of the different types of food banks out there, and took them on a collaborative kind of co-creation process through a number of workshops. So we spent time upskilling them on the principles of user-led design so they could see the importance of having a website where those journeys were really clear and what it meant to offer a really clear user journey. We took them on a journey to show them how those sort of core user journeys can be consistently delivered, and really spent a lot of time with them exploring where do you really need that flexibility to make the website your own, where is it that that creativity will be most needed and most valued. And even though we're working with still quite a large panel, there was about 30 of them engaged in these workshops, and we wanted to make sure the wider network was being exposed to the work that we were doing and understanding why we were making the decisions we were making. So all of those sessions were recorded and shared with the wider network so they could engage with them as well. So our answer to creating a consistent experience while also giving that flexibility was a starter template kit concept. So basically the starter kit required minimum impact from the food banks for them to provide that key journey. Essentially, not quite at the touch of a button, but without too much effort, they can set up a website that will allow people to access the emergency food, will have some best practice pre-populated templates set up. If they want to do very little to it, they can, and they've got a website that's up and running. Also, crucially, it contains some fixed elements, particularly around the emergency food journey. So we obviously spent a lot of time with the food banks talking to them about the importance of that journey being really, really clear. So we fixed that journey so they can't make changes to it. And we also automated some of the key content going into that journey. So for things like food centre website addresses, opening times, etc., we integrated with Trussell Trust database so that that information would be pre-populated into that experience, takes away the manual input from the food banks, but crucially means that that information is always up to date because the database is the single source of truth there. But around that fixed template, there is a lot of flexibility for those food banks that want to add their own sections, that want to change some of the content, that want to put in their own news, that want to promote their own services. So it really works on both of those levels. Something else we also did was link some of the content from the main site into the template. So if people want to feature and keep up-to-date content really easily, it can pull through sort of news and campaign information from the main site as well. So I'm going to hand over to James to talk us through the sort of tech solution that sits behind this.
Thank you. So the technologies selected for the new website had to support with our ambition for delivering a secure, performant, reliable and accessible new platform. It also needed to be highly scalable due to having to serve not only the corporate side content but also upwards of 400 food bank microsites. It needed to be editor friendly and not only that, give us the means to kind of customize and extend that editorial experience to fit our use case rather than cramming everyone into a one-size-fits-all solution. And all of that had to be done in a way that was cost optimized with minimal operational overheads. Our overall approach to the platform architecture was kind of breaking the system down to multiple kind of smaller, more manageable components. Drupal as the content management system and Acquia as the cloud platform for serving the application can really do sit at the heart of that new platform. They sit alongside front-end applications for the website pages and the separate web app for the donation funnel. Alongside that, there is a new design system, React-based kind of component library that is used kind of consistently across all kind of front-end experiences, and also complemented by a suite of API microservices for managing functionality around donations. What you see there is obviously a very simple idea of it. Obviously, there's all manner of other analytics and marketing tools and other systems all around that. So Drupal and Acquia as the kind of the central content hub for the new platform serve content for all of those applications. So content for the corporate site, the individual food banks, and the donation funnel. It follows a kind of a decoupled architecture where we have a GraphQL API layer around the site. One of the super compelling reasons for us selecting Drupal was its excellent kind of headless content delivery capabilities and also its rich ecosystem of community modules. A really good practical example of that is our use of the GraphQL Compose community module for auto-generating an API layer around the whole site, which sped up development massively, and as well as obviously working with Acquia and a lot of those infrastructure considerations being handled by the Acquia cloud platform, it meant the team could really focus their efforts on delivering value. Our approach to multi-site was to deliver a single CMS instance that covered content across the entire platform. We used the group community module to module each individual food bank as a group that could have a collection of content, so be that website pages or objects such as donation points or food distribution centers, and also kind of bring together users as well. We then used Drupal's permission system to ensure those content boundaries were respected, so editors could only manage content for a food bank that they belong to. And obviously a really compelling reason for taking this approach is that it allowed us to give the core Trussell team like a holistic overall view of the content across the entire platform, which made it obviously very easy to audit content and users rather than having to log into obviously multiple siloed off CMS instances. Another benefit was that approach made it very easy to deliver journeys that aggregated content from multiple food banks. So for example, with the emergency food relief journey, it allowed us to very easily, when a user searches for, enters their postcode and searches for kind of emergency food relief in their area, very simple to give like a single unified list of content that's pulled across from all of the food banks. And that's a capability we leveraged a lot kind of throughout the website in terms of lots of journeys making use of that. In terms of how we kind of brought the starter kit concept that was previously described to life, we set up like an example kind of templated food bank group that had the best practice content set up on it in a way that reflected the IA and the content strategy we wanted all the other food banks to follow. We then extended kind of community modules available for cloning content to basically build a one-click tool to allow all the entities associated with that kind of starter group to be cloned to a new food bank, which meant that that new food bank was immediately seeded with all of that kind of best practice content. We could then invite the members of that food bank team to then add and edit that content. and then we incrementally kind of moved over the food banks in that way. Even though there are differences in kind of capabilities between the different types of editorial users on the site, so between the core Trussell team and the food bank editors, the one thing that unifies them is that they're incredibly kind of time poor. So we had to deliver an editorial experience that made managing content as seamless as possible. Ways we did that kind of include obviously having a very flexible but kind of an approach that kind of enforced well-structured content in terms of making use of the paragraphs community module. We pulled in the same design system component library that we use on the front-end applications into the editorial pages of Drupal, so that as editors were managing content, they were seeing a very kind of representative preview of that content as they live edit it, and gave a nice interface for obviously browsing, searching, filtering for those components they can add to pages. And as Cherie mentioned previously, we also leveraged integrations with external databases of contact information for the food banks to ensure that information around opening times and kind of contact details were automatically updated so that information didn't need to be manually keyed in, and kind of reduced the overheads of managing that content.
And so other than the fact that I no longer spend my Christmases trying to fix a broken gateway, this experience has had a huge impact for us as an organisation, to the point where I actually didn't believe these figures and I had to ask my team to run them again. But we now get 42% more people entering our donation funnel, which is absolutely incredible. And we're seeing about 22% more engagement across all different users on the site, whether or not you're trying to get help, whether or not you're trying to donate, take a campaigning action for us. We also know, and I know from speaking to our food banks, that they are so much happier with this new template and the site. It's saving them time, it's making it easier for them to share their amazing work, and they're just over the moon. I hear about it every time I talk to them.
Cool, so now we're just going to touch on how we went about redesigning that whole get help journey, so how people actually access the emergency food and the role of digital in that. As you heard, that was a really key focus area for the new digital experience. It was something that just wasn't working very well at all, and it's obviously really, really, really important. We're dealing with people who are in some of the biggest, most stressful moments of their life. We want to make sure that we're making it easier for them and not causing them more stress. So as Meredith mentioned earlier, the accessing the emergency food is actually quite complex. There's a number of offline and online touch points. So to really kind of understand the role the website had to play in making this experience better, we took a service design approach to really understanding that journey. We mapped that full end-to-end experience and all the touch points online and offline in that experience. And use that to understand what the pain points in the entire journey were that digital could help relieve, and also to help Trussell Trust think about things like the role of offline channels such as the helpline, and building into that the feedback we'd got from user testing and what we'd heard about the whole experience to help Trussell see the holistic experience. This then really helped us to make some really important design decisions around things like where the phone number should feature in that journey, where we need to include FAQs, so where there are things that are confusing people in that offline journey, how can we start surfacing those in the online journey to start answering some of those questions, remove that confusion, and just provided some really important context for that journey, including how we wanted people to feel at different points. Because as we've kind of touched on at the outset of the work, we really wanted to set out to understand the needs of this audience in particular, with emphasis on their physical, emotional and practical needs. We generated lots of insight. Trussell have already lots of great insight on their audiences, but also dealing with people with lived experience through user testing and really working to understand that end-to-end journey that I described. With this audience, obviously they're in crisis. They're looking for emergency food, but there's some other things to factor in as well. There's a really high rate of disability in this audience, a really high rate of mental health issues, and we're really reaching them at some of the most vulnerable moments in their life. So the digital experience we designed has to be reassuring, supportive, and an accessible experience. So there really were some key principles we took through in the design. Principle 1 was really focused on avoiding overwhelm. So we've broken that journey, it's step by step, one step at a time, focusing on essential actions and removing all other distractions from that journey. Principle 2 was being really clear and direct in the language that we used, simple, unambiguous instruction, no jargon at all, but staying conscious of where we needed to introduce those supportive moments. Where is it that people are likely to start feeling stressed and emotional, and use softer language and real stories to really help people feel less alone during those moments. And principle 4 was about understanding that context. So I've touched on this a bit before, but one thing that came through when we were mapping out the process is understanding that digital experiences that require a lot of data for people to access on their mobile phone is problematic for this audience. So we needed to build an experience that required that minimal mobile data to access, as well as understanding the complexities of the offline aspects of the journey, so that we could put those most common questions that were confusing people and build those FAQs into relevant steps in the journey, so their questions were being answered as they moved through the journey. So a little quote there, but as you've heard from Meredith, all of this has really kind of elevated what Trussell Trust are able to do. And it's an ongoing partnership. We just touched on a couple of aspects of the things we've been working on. What we're really focusing on next is how to utilise digital to drive that engagement and build that movement for change. So as Meredith described, food banks no longer need to exist. And that's what we're focusing on over the next few months, but maybe we'll come and talk to you about how we did that next year.